This is The Blockchain Show. The Blockchain Show is a weekly podcast that demystifies and promotes widespread adoption of cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Hello?
Hello, are you sure you're ready to do this?
Hello, congratulations on the baby.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was not fun, but I'm glad it's done. I heard that you had an experience yourself on Halloween.
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, that was a home birth as well, so I can kind of get an idea of what you just went through.
That's a great birthday.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's a great birthday. It seems like it ought to be a great birthday.
Every year's a costume party. All right, let me just run to the bathroom and then we can get started anytime.
Cool.
Okay. We have on Sarah. I'll kind of tell you a little bit about our guest. Goes by the name Kumavis, I think. He is also known as Aaron Davis, but goes by Kumavis. And he is the developer behind MetaMask, which is like right now it's just kind of like a Chrome extension. So inside Chrome, you can download MetaMask, and that makes your Chrome browser Ethereum compliant. I
can't believe you're talking to me like this, and I'm kind of with you. All right.
You're kind of with me, right? So it makes it so you can do you use a browser to connect to the internet,
Chrome, Google Chrome.
Whether it's Google Chrome or Firefox or IE. Well, with Chrome, you can download an extension, so like an add-on or modify your Chrome in a way so that
I never knew what made Chrome. This is an interesting lesson. Go for it. Sorry.
Yeah, so on Chrome, you can get an extension, and one of the extensions you get is MetaMask, and MetaMask allows Chrome to talk to an Ethereum blockchain, whether it's a test blockchain or the real blockchain, or
right on.
So a lot of companies are using MetaMask because it helps them so greatly to be able to have just a normal browser that you're using in day to day, because otherwise you would have to use something like Mist, which is the Ethereum Foundation's version of a browser. And it's not really easy to use. It's great for what it is for a lot of things. But, like most things, they're just kind of in a state where they need to be improved upon greatly. They're in that pre-beta or whatever. So MetaMask is so helpful for developers. And right now, and I think that, if there'll ever be a point where, grandma can use blockchain, it'll be with the help of MetaMask or something like it.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It's a good pitch. I should use that.
It's very funny too because there's grandma's in town. My mom's in town helping, watching, and I'm kind of on fire lately for blockchain. So I've been watching a lot of TED Talks and whatever on YouTube, especially with her in the room because she's just not catching that wave, and I get it. But this is how it's accessible to anybody then now, right? Anybody has Chrome, you can just get this and bam, now you're in.
That's the idea.
So can you tell me your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Aaron. I also go by Kumavis.
Kumavis.
Find me on GitHub and Twitter as Kumavis.
Okay, I see. Right on. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Where in the world are you?
I'm in Seattle currently, though I tend to move around a bit, so I'm not sure where I will be next year.
Yes, my kind of gypsy folk. How did you know about the show?
Someone linked me to your show on YouTube because they had mentioned MetaMask, and so I got to listen to that little clip. Thanks for the shout out there.
Yeah, we put all our episodes up on YouTube. I
think we need to tweak that.
Week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to improve it a bit, but I'm a firm believer in the fail fast methodology. Just kind of know that it's not going to be perfect and improve it as it goes.
Yeah, I think I might have messed something up with mashing the name together because it doesn't show up. Maybe that's just me, but that's neither here nor there. I would like to know more about this MetaMask.
Yeah, so I learned about Ethereum pretty early on, and I started envisioning what kind of things I'd want to build on top of Ethereum. And I kept thinking, so let's say I have some cool ideas, some cool project, and now I want to crowdfund that because it's going to take a couple years to build out. And then, I want to link my friends to that crowdfunding campaign and try to raise some funds. And, if it doesn't just run in your web browser, I can't link to it. Right. So the first, even inside of, we'll get to a little bit later perhaps, but the official Ethereum application browser Mist doesn't, as far as I know, support links, and it certainly didn't early on. Because it didn't even exist at that time. But we needed some way to, just like as you do on the normal web today, pass links around and be able to start interacting with that application immediately. And so that's what got me thinking about how to build MetaMask. How can I just sort of use the web browser that I use every day in order to interact with these applications?
That is brilliant. Like an interpreter.
Mm-hmm.
Are you interested in languages?
I am. Actually, previously, before I got into programming, I was a Japanese interpreter on a cruise boat.
Fascinating. That's like a whole other world.
Yeah. That's a previous life.
That's a fantastic application of that skill, because you have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to there's some concepts that don't match up, and that's what you do. You translate for us.
Exactly.
When I had first heard of MetaMask, it was, the state of things was pretty, you had to have a really technical background. You couldn't just be somebody who was interested in, you had to have a really strong technical background to use Ethereum, to use to its full extent. And I don't even think, with MetaMask we're there yet, but I noticed all these developers that were just like going nuts over what MetaMask was providing and making it so easy for people who were developing to develop dApps, because the state of dApp development was very, very difficult in its early days. And I think it still is difficult, but it's getting better all the time. And I don't know if, I know that there's going to be some improvements to MetaMask and make it really, really easy. You kind of hinted that there'll be a way for developers to input JavaScript file. Because right now the way it works is you have to download MetaMask, and that makes your browser compliant. But in the future, you'll be able to, the developer will just put MetaMask JavaScript file in their file, and you'll go to any, which is, I think, ultimately what you want is you just go to a website, go to a web link, and it works.
Right. So in terms of like the ease of using dApps, the goal of MetaMask is to just make it stupid easy. But at the current state of things is that you need to install an extension to use, a web page. And, if you do install it, it works all right. But the fact that you have to install an extension is like, that's such a huge caveat, and I'm really unhappy with that. So we haven't talked about it too much. We did announce it at DevCon, but we have a little something in the works that we're calling MetaMaskera. And it's a JavaScript tool that you can throw in your application, which will give you what the MetaMask extension normally gives you, which is access to account management and access to the Ethereum network. So that's in progress. Not sure when it'll be available, but it's coming out 2017, something like that.
You wanted to talk a little bit about what blockchains are good for. What are blockchains good for?
There's so much buzz about blockchains, and sometimes there's not a great analysis of what they provide compared to existing peer-to-peer structures and things like this. And so one thing blockchains are really good at is creating an order of events. That may sound kind of maybe a bit boring, but it is the primary thing that, say, like the Bitcoin blockchain mining does. So if you think of like transactions, and transactions are signed, as a normal node, you can verify that those transactions are signed correctly, and you can verify if their account balance is sufficient in order to send that amount. So you can verify all those things, but you have to you need to know what happened first. If there's two actions where the user sent all their money over here and they sent all their money over there, those are both individually fine, but they conflict, right? So one has to have happened before the other. And so we need to establish an order of events, and that's what the miners do. So the first thing is you're coming to consensus on who did what and in what order. And then you can look at those actions and figure out who has what. Again, in the case of Bitcoin, this is who has how many Bitcoin. And so let's say if you generalize the problem in the way Ethereum sort of has, where you can we have this consensus mechanism, and now we can start tracking different kinds of things. Who did what and who has what. What is meaningful to track on a blockchain as opposed to some other peer-to-peer structure, and it seems to be that it's mostly about scarcity. Like tokens, Bitcoins, again, there's a limited number of Bitcoins and you can have some of them. And another one is unique human readable names. This is similar to like the domain name system in the existing internet. Like, there's only one google.com. So there's then a market for those names, and those names have a value. And if it's a really long name, it's probably a low value. If it's a really short name, it's probably a high value. So those are other good things that are easy to track on the blockchain. And with this notion of scarcity, I actually I heard probably the best criticism, or at least my favorite criticism of the blockchain technology, and it was, I was promised a post-scarcity future, and here we are creating artificial scarcity.
Artificial scarcity,
right.
okay.
That's
And I really like that one, and so I like that. Let that one stick in my mind.
That is very funny. That hadn't even crossed my mind until you brought that up. Because I just love that we live in abundance and this works so well with it.
Right? Yeah.
But the value seems to come in the scarcity.
It's going to be hard to convince people to give up scarcity because, like store of value and these sorts of things are very easy to use. And we live in a capitalist world, basically.
Baby steps.
Yeah. So part of the way the scarcity works, and another sort of item that the blockchain is good at is the notion of recency. So you can get a proof that a user owns X, but do they still own X? And this is appropriate in situations like, let's say we're going to build a community-driven Airbnb on the blockchain. And then if you want to participate in that system, you have the front door of the apartment or house you're Airbnb. It has a smart lock on it, and then it can be opened only by the identity that is currently rented. And so when you go to open it, you're presenting a proof that you are that person, but the lock needs to know not only that you at some point had access to that door, but that you currently have access to the door. And blockchains are pretty good for that.
Yeah, to take a step back, I kind of think of, when I think about, the ordering of events and what blockchains are good for, I kind of akin it to the actual invention of written history. Like, we had written history before, but in what actually happened is somebody would write something down, and then somebody else would rewrite it down, changing things to the way that they wanted it to be, their interpretations of it, but with blockchain, that doesn't happen anymore. You write something down, and that event is written down for all time. I think of blockchain as like this ordering of events, this written history. This is actually the first time.
First real history.
The first real, unchangeable,
undisputable
written history. And I think that's really exciting about blockchain.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
That's a good point. So we go from human writing to maybe digital writing, and then you can add a little cryptography on, and we can do the hashes. We can have the digital fingerprint that is the exact copy of that document. And then with blockchain, you get time stamping on top of that, because you can bury the hash of that document deep in a tower of proof of work, and clearly that couldn't have been faked.
Who knew that chronicling could be so exciting and have so much potential? So,
how do people find out about MetaMask, and why are they so excited about it? Because the developers really are. Is that kind of what you kind of want to ask? Is how do?
I suppose so. Yeah, like there are things that are humongous companies that I learn about, and they're like working behind the scenes of stuff, so you don't often know of them. And I didn't know. It seems like it's accessible to anyone who has Chrome, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So maybe the reason why it's not really known is that we don't market it very heavily. So we're a team of 4 people. MetaMask is a team of 4 people. We're inside the consensus, which is about 100 people, but we are, a semi-autonomous body, and we're all developers, and we're just constantly working on the actual product and not, waving our arms around trying to get attention about it.
Right. Right. It seems like something that you shouldn't have to wave your arms around. I mean, but I guess that's, nobody knows even what the blockchain is. So yeah, you really have to shout.
I think it's mostly come from people using it and finding that it is actually like a low friction way to interact with Ethereum. And then it sort of spreads by word of mouth. But similar thing. So there's a lot of other wallets out there, like Jax and my Ether wallet. And these are really cool projects. And they're more popular. They have many more users. What we're doing is a bit more complex because we're trying to be an Ethereum application browser as opposed to just a wallet and means of coin transfer and these sorts of things.
I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit, to somebody who kind of doesn't know the space.
Yeah.
What's the difference? What is a full-featured Ethereum browser capable of? It's not here yet, and you're at the forefront of building it. What are some of the cool apps or dApps that somebody can build with it?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it by initially ignoring your question and talking about the history of Ethereum a little more. They'll help give some context. So through Bitcoin, we learned how to come up with this sort of the hard consensus where all of us, untrusting of each other, can agree more or less on the current state of the world, at least that we're the world that we're paying attention to, the world that we're coming to consensus on. And I'm talking about the Bitcoin blockchain, who has how much Bitcoin, this sort of thing. So Ethereum is sort of the supposition. What if we could track arbitrary state and not just who has how much money? And now Bitcoin is a bit more complex than that, but it's also rather limited, and it's limited in its virtual machine. And this is where Ethereum and Bitcoin differ the most, is in their virtual machine. The virtual machine is how they calculate their state transfer. I'm using kind of hard, not great
hard to understand
here.
Words.
Yeah. So let me try to express that further. These are the rules of how we update from where we were before to where we are now.
Okay.
Now in Bitcoin, it's rather simple, like a calculator. It's I'm sending 5 over here, so minus my account 5 and add that account over there 5. Of course, it's a bit more complex than that under the hood, but that's more or less the type of calculation we're doing here. In Ethereum, it's a bit more similar to how your computer works, where it's like, okay, I'm going to run some arbitrary code, and then maybe I'll write to a file system. And that part, it gets a little difficult to explain in your standard human language because it's low-level technical and meant to be as general as possible. So it's one of the analogies that's used here is Bitcoin is a calculator and Ethereum is a smartphone, and you can add new applications onto Ethereum. And just like your phone wasn't built for any specific applications in mind, like when they made the iPhone, they didn't know what Twitter was, and you can still install Twitter after the fact, and it works. I hope I'm getting my history correct there, but
Is that true that Twitter was after the iPhone?
I was just thinking that. Like, how would you have done it before?
Podcast.
Would seem impractical, wouldn't it? You'd have to run home and tweet.
Maybe Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go was definitely after.
So there you go. So like the iPhone wasn't built with Pokemon Go in mind. They didn't know what Pokemon Go was. but later they were able to create Pokemon Go, and they didn't really need to change the iPhone in order for Pokemon Go to work. However, if you wanted to get Pokemon Go on your calculator would need to be like a very fancy TI-83 plus or something in order to run that.
I think that it is no longer a calculator.
Yeah. Basically, it becomes a smartphone, and really all a smartphone is a small computer in your pocket. So the idea is that Ethereum is a computer, and so when you send a transaction in there, you perform an action in the system, it's going to change the system a little bit. So it's like I'm using my computer, I create a new text document, and now my hard drive is different because I created a text document. So when you have a general system like this, you can start building your own programs on top of that. So it's kind of like when I create a new program or smart contract on Ethereum, I get a little chunk of the blockchain is carved out for me to have my own state in there and for me to make my own state transition rules. So this is like, I'm going to record RSVPs to my party, and everyone needs to, when they RSVP, they got to pay ahead some amount. So now I can make the rules for tracking if people paid enough to RSVP and who has RSVP'd. And I have space to write down the names of everyone who has RSVP'd to come to my party. And that's all shared on the same blockchain. And that, again, Ethereum didn't need to be built with that RSVP application in mind. I don't know how clear that was. And I'd be happy to clarify it more. But the idea is that it's a platform and you can build these applications on top. Now that you've built those applications on top, how the hell do you use them? And that's a much more different question.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you use them then?
Right.
So let's say with Bitcoin, we've had a wallet either in the web browser or in the application that we've downloaded. This, to borrow a term from web browsers, this program, this web app, whatever it is your user agent. It is acting on your behalf and doing all the technical muckery required for you to actually send that Bitcoin or whatnot.
Well said.
In the case of Ethereum, there's a bit more going on. So your user agent needs to be able to display that to you. So what was before just simply a wallet is now something more like a web browser. And so the official Ethereum app browser is Mist. And MetaMask's suggestion is, why not just use the same exact browser that you use every day to be your Ethereum app browser?
Yeah, brilliant.
And there's extra benefits to that too. If you're using Mist, you kind of have to download your own blockchain. So there's a huge technical mountain to climb in order to manage downloading your own blockchain and keeping that synced up, just so you can use Ethereum dApps. With MetaMask,
I don't even know what that means.
With MetaMask, you can use your own blockchain, I believe. There's settings you can do that, or you can just let somebody else manage the maintenance of maintaining the state of the blockchain for you. Is that correct?
Yeah. So one, you need access to the existing data of what's on the blockchain, and you need proofs that data is correct, and you need private keys and identity. And I'll get back to them in a second. But so the Mist developers built it to be, of course, because it is the official application of the Ethereum Foundation, it is doing everything the correct way, and where it's downloading all the information and doing all the checks to make sure that this is 100% true, and you're not relying on any third parties other than the software developers. Now, MetaMask has a little more freedom here, because we don't need to do everything ideally as the foundation does. So we cut some corners and we lower the trust a little bit, or we require a little more trust. We lower the trustlessness in exchange for zero syncing time. And so the current version of MetaMask is we basically have copies of the blockchain running for you. This is run actually by another project inside Consensus called Infura, and you can find them online. They will help you set up services like this if you want something for both public and private chains. But what they're providing for us is copies of the public Ethereum test networks and the public Ethereum main networks, and so we could just ask them for data. Now they could lie to us about the current state of the network.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you freeze? This is the part I was wondering about. This is the part where we have to trust a little. We have just to nudge our trust meter.
Yes,
is in this step right here.
Right. When we ask about the state of the network, they could lie to us, and we're not getting proofs with that request.
There's a really cool service called I think it's I mispronounced it, but Infura. Mm-hmm. And so they're in Consensus, and what happens is MetaMask asks Infura for the most recent state of the blockchain. So instead of having to go through all the hoops of downloading the blockchain, ensuring you have around the right fork, or ensuring you have, and then there's a sync time, which I guess is down a lot now, where you can sync the entire blockchain in minutes with fast sync. But it used to take hours or days even to sync the blockchain.
So it's like being the first person in the operator game.
Operator game. What do you mean?
Well, that's like the trust you're asking. It's like, okay, so you don't get to see the actual blockchain. The only thing you have to kind of really, the reason why you get to cut these corners and just get the job done is that you have to believe MetaMask.
You did kind of lose me on the operator metaphor.
Remember that game when you operator where you sit in a circle and somebody says some sentence, they whisper it into somebody's ear, and then that person whispers it into the next person's ear.
I think that's like telephone game.
Oh, is it telephone? I thought it was operator. Where
operator's the game with like the tweezers, and you take out the bone.
No, that's operation.
That's what I was thinking of.
Which isn't anywhere near as fun as I remember it, by the way.
It was a blast. Is it not fun now?
No, I got one, and I'm like, geez, I'm sorry, guys, this isn't that much fun.
I think it's one of those new ones where they like updated it and now it's crap.
Yeah, sort of. It
right?
is. It's like I think it's true because it's not anywhere near as alarming as it used to be. The thrill was that it would stop your heart with like the terror of the, and now it's like a gentle, like it just, oh, you did it wrong, and there's there's nothing scary about that. Sorry, we got to go back to
similarly to the penalty of misusing the tweezers, touching the edges, and being slightly electrocuted.
Yes. You had to go for that, right? You had to put your tongue to it too. Just
let me see if I can segue this. You could potentially be defrauded if the Infura service lied to you about the current state of the blockchain.
You are a master of interpretation. Silver tongue.
The default for MetaMask is that you are relying on this blockchain service to give you the correct information. And as an advantage, you have zero sync time. It works as soon as you install it. Now, if you're unhappy with that trust system, at any time you can opt out. You can run and sync your own node and provide or some other third-party service, and specify that in the MetaMask configuration, and then it'll go there and ask for the blockchain data. And it's just using the standard Ethereum JSON RPC, so it can be a local node on your computer or what have you. Now, we have some mad science in the works to turn MetaMask into a proper light client, so it's doing all the checks. But it's complex, and it's going to take a little while in order to get that out.
Can I ask about the name? How'd you come up with that name?
Oh yeah, so naming things is really hard. Mm-hmm. I have 2 kids, so I've I really racked my head on things like this. MetaMask came out of the notion that when using Ethereum, it's not just a wallet; it's now an identity. You're performing actions in this system as an identity, and for privacy's sake, you may end up having multiple identities. You may have your social media identity. You may have your gambling identity. You may have XYZ. And so we needed a tool to help you track and manage your identities. Now I'm using Mask as to talk about identity here, and MetaMask as in it's like the layer above your identities where you keep them all together.
Oh, that's clever. Because I'm totally one of those people.
I don't know if that translates when people hear the name, but it seems to stick.
Great. Yeah, that's very interesting.
I think I represented MetaMask all right here. It is a browser extension. It's in the Chrome extension store. It is compatible with a few other browsers right now, but the process of getting into their extension stores is a little more difficult. Like Firefox apparently manually reviews the code of every extension. And since we have megabytes of JavaScript because we're including various cryptography libraries and all sorts of things, that is quite a task for a manual review. So we found it difficult to get into a lot of the other extension stores, but that's an ongoing process. You can always build it yourself and install it if you're a power user. But it works fine in Chrome, and so that's what we recommend right now.
I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about other projects in the space that are using maybe MetaMask, or maybe that MetaMask is using. I think you have a couple that you want to bring up, and then maybe you can add to it. Like, does My Ether wallet use MetaMask? And
no. We're good friends with My Ether wallet. We talk now and then. But My Ether wallet, they don't use MetaMask and they don't use Infura. Maybe they'll use Infura one day. But in the meantime, they run their own nodes and they're kind of doing their own thing. Their main goal is being a really good wallet for Ethereum, and so you can manage Ether, manage tokens. They were even building some specialized UI for, say, voting in DAOs and things like this.
Did Singular DTV use MetaMask? Who is one of the biggest users of MetaMask that you think is set up integrated with MetaMask, if there's any?
Yeah. So MakerDAO has always done really good work in integrating with MetaMask.
The Rune is just so I get lost it's just like it's so over my head. He's very clever. So like they have an on-chain exchange, and you can use that on MetaMask. Try not to advertise it too hard because I'm sure it's going to come around and bite me from the legal system. There's Rule ETH, which is a gambling application that has MetaMask control or MetaMask support, and if you can gamble using the user experience of MetaMask if it is legal in your jurisdiction. I tried to research the other day by the U.S. and you can't even reach it anymore. Originally you could. There's probably some workaround, but
VPNs exist.
But it's such a cool app. It looks very, very nice, and it's you don't have to trust these offshore sites with your money. Not all of them are on the up and up. A lot of them are. A lot of the state of gambling is in halfway decent jurisdiction, at least. But you never know, and then you have to, especially if you're in the United States, you can't. They really prevent you from doing it. So I think, I'm in favor of allowing every grown adults to do whatever they want. So
So you mentioned not having to trust the gambling sites, and I want to talk about that because there is another way you can do Ethereum applications without MetaMask and without Mist and without some special browser, and that is you have your own access to the blockchain. So you could use Infuro, or you could just run your own nodes or something like this. But what you do is you create a private key for the on the user's behalf, and you store that in your application. And then you have that user, say if it's a gambling application, you have the user fund that account and then perform, gambling actions from that account. But as soon as that user sends money into that account, if the site is malicious, they could just drain that account. So you do, in that model, you do have to trust the application developers. Now, when you interact with some potentially shady site, when you're using MetaMask, that site can suggest transactions for you to perform, and then MetaMask will show UI for the potential transaction, and show you the max it could ever cost, show you what it's, try to show you what it's trying to do, how much money it's trying to spend, and where it's going. Mm-hmm. And then you can decide whether or not you want to perform that action. The malicious application author is not able to act on your behalf. So there the trust model is different. Your private keys are safe and separate from the application. And MetaMask is a user agent for you that will sign those transactions for you and send them off to the network, but it will only do that under your confirmation, as opposed to giving the keys to this application author.
Okay. What are some other peer-to-peer systems that you are excited about or working with?
Yeah, so Ethereum is really cool and a lot of fun, but there's so much you can do without a blockchain. And I feel like you learn about a blockchain and now it's the tool you want to use for every problem. But there's a lot you can do just without. I mean, if you think of like torrents and things like this, swarming and sharing files like that's pretty neat. And there's some other things you can do, and a couple projects that use that are so one is IPFS. If you haven't heard of IPFS, it's the Interplanetary File System. It's a really cool project to help preserve. It doesn't. Let's see. What's the best way to describe it?
They're basically rebuilding the web. Like its goal is to rewrite, a decentralized, censorship-resistant web. Yeah,
that's a good way of summarizing it. It's kind of this fundamental shift from making direct connections, or like talking to servers and getting a request to a server and a response back. Like I go to the twitter.com server, ask for the Twitter app and the tweets, and then they send it back to me. Instead, it's like, hey, I'm looking for this content, and maybe the content is the Twitter app or something like that. And then anyone nearby, anyone that I'm connected to that has that data, can give it to me, and I can know it's correct. So like I can get data from my mortal enemy, and I can know that I can trust that data because it was correct, assuming I was requesting the correct thing in the first place. And so it turns it into this content-centric network, where instead of making a specific request to a specific person, I'm making a request for specific data and getting it from whoever has it. And if you've ever been in a conference and someone mentions something and 100 people in the room Google it or try to pull it down, it's kind of absurd. You have everyone squeezing through this one connection to go out to the internet, get the same thing and bring it back. What would happen if that was over IPFS, ideally, is that one person would go get it and then they would pass it on to everyone in the room without having the actual coordination of people asking each other for it at the human level. So that's a really cool one, and they're working on a number of standards and specs and general libraries for building a peer-to-peer system. libp2p is the name of their They're a project for it's general tools for building peer-to-peer systems, setting up a mesh, and it's really cool. I encourage developers out there to check it out.
Yeah,
another one that's more available to users. You don't have to be a programmer. Is called a Patchwork. This is very experimental, very in development, but it is a peer-to-peer social network, and it does not use a blockchain or any incentivization schemes. It's just like you just use it, and you can talk to your friends and meet new people and post content and comment and these sorts of things. And so that one's called Patchwork. There's a ton of projects out there called Patchwork. This one is the Patchwork on GitHub by the organization SSBC. And that's, I'm not sure exactly what this stands for, but it's from the Secure Scuttlebutt family of technologies, which is a gossiping protocol, which is another type of peer-to-peer system for sharing messages, performing not consensus but synchronization, and it's pretty neat. I encourage people to check it out.
I haven't heard anything about Patchwork before, so I'll have to look into that. It's pretty
subtle. I don't know how they feel about me announcing it on the internet, but
we don't have too many users. I think it'll still be a well-kept secret among blockchain enthusiasts, so it'll be okay. So I've kind of asked a bunch of questions. I don't know, is there anything that I'm missing?
I don't know. I've ever since I got into the blockchain space, I've been introduced to so many interesting ideas about economics, governance, how societies function, and it's just been this awesome journey so far. And it's definitely one technology where, like virtual reality, I feel like it has the capacity to save and destroy society at the same time. And so I really, just because it has a blockchain involved doesn't mean that the systems that we build with it are going to be good for humanity. So we really have to be thinking beyond just like the implementation, and like how do we actually build good systems that don't create tyrants or police states or whatnot.
Yeah, how do we ensure that the technology is used for good, and what are some of, in the perfect world, what are some of the benefits that the type of transparency that the invention of actual recorded history brings to us, and then what are some of the ways that it can be misused, I guess.
Yeah. So one thing, I talked about blockchains being good for showing like who performed what, and so you can, let's say you're going to use it for a governance system, you can have transparency into how money is flowing and what it's being spent on inside of an organization. And this can hopefully help remove some degree of corruption. But at the same time, like, usually one of the founding principles of voting is that it's private and like unprovable. So if someone's buying votes, you can't even prove that you voted for that person, right? But another part there is that direct democracy is usually logistically infeasible. Like if every decision that U.S. government made required a vote by all the citizens, it wouldn't work very well, or at least the whole thing would need to be overhauled so that it would function.
Well, I mean, I think you could possibly just allow people to dedicate all economic votes to, their favorite economist, and then all science votes to like their favorite scientist or something like that, where you kind of.
Well, so then we get into liquid democracy, and that's a really interesting topic, and it's much better than representative democracy. In some ways, representative democracy, you can frame it as a liquid democracy where I've, put my voting power in this representative and then they're going to vote on my behalf. But the thing is, as soon as they stop voting on your behalf, stop acting on your behalf, it's very difficult for you to sort of rescind your voting power. And so liquid democracy is more about the idea where you can take back that representative voting power as soon as you want. So I do foresee those systems coming out. They can still, think of like having one bad tweet or something like that, and then your career as a representative is destroyed or something, and a career politician with that. I don't know.
I think it's a good thing. No, like
it could be,
as soon as a representative really abuses their power or screws up in a bad way, I just, if they have one vote wrong, I want to go to somebody who is going to, once politicians get in office right now, they're anyways, we live in a democracy. I'm in America, and we have politicians that are basically bought and paid for by the corporations. I don't think that's a shock or a surprise. I don't think this is conspiracy theory. I think everybody knows it. It's not surprising in the slightest bit to anybody, I don't think. And so, we elect people in the hopes that, maybe they'll change. But as soon as they hit Washington, they all become a bunch of bozos, I guess they say, At least that's my opinion on it. So I think that being able to revoke, representation is a great, a great benefit that would benefit governments. The system was created, in our country 200 years ago and hasn't really been changed much. I can't imagine anybody thinking like 4 years between deciding a new person is a good idea or practical or anything like that. Sorry about that.
No, but I understand why it's that way, because logistically it's too hard to have that large a consensus all the time. But I think, maybe blockchain-like systems and systems that are employing cryptography can improve the situation. Another sort of weird thing is in the past year we had the Panama Papers came out, and we had some documents leaked that showed how various wealthy, powerful people were, secretly storing their funds overseas. And with the launch of Zcash, we basically have that technology democratized to everyone. Now, the general public reaction to learning, we already knew about this, but getting some details about how this is done in Panama, it shocks people. They're cheating the system. This is, generally seen as a very bad thing. But now we all have access to it. What does that mean? Does this mean the starvation of the state because they can't enforce taxes? What is going to happen when we can all do that? I have no idea. It seems like the only thing that can survive that is voluntarism, and you paying taxes to an organization or some, maybe taxes isn't the appropriate word. You funding some organization purely because you think it's important for that organization to exist, and there's no enforcement for you to pay that. I have no idea. It's going to be a really strange world.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a very strange world, and products like MetaMask will help people navigate. Certainly, you can. I think, I foresee governments and corporations have kind of been ruling for the past 200 years or so, and it's changing very, very quickly. And I don't know whether I'm sure that not everything is going to be great about this, but I think a lot of it will be. We might have to, redesign how we think about society, instead of having, a government where it's based on geography. You have organizations based on communal ideas or ideas that we share. If the world's biggest if people think that the world's biggest problem right now is, say, global warming or climate change or something of that nature, you can, mobilize like-minded people all over the globe to contribute funds to, rectifying the situation. as opposed to, no, you have to work with only people in your general geographic area, and we're going to force everybody else in your geographic area to pay for your pet projects. So I can definitely see a future where, things change a bit.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride. Well, thanks for taking this little walk off of the deep end with me.
Yeah, we covered a lot there. So thanks for coming on the show. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Alrighty.
Cool. Well, hopefully you can put out some links to the projects I mentioned. Again, you can find me on GitHub and Twitter as Kumavis. Feel free to say hello, ask me questions about what the hell I just was talking about. All right, thanks. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.